Hi everyone, thanks for joining us on another episode of the Reno Q&A Show. Today I've got Kate Smith from Raine Horne at Semaphore. It's a suburb in Adelaide, an old established suburb in Adelaide near the beach. And Kate runs that business. Kate, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me.
Before we get into a lot of the questions that are coming our way from our audience, just tell us a bit about your story with the Raine Horne business and how you got into real estate.
Yep. So we've actually been with the brand for over 25 years. My mum started the office back before I was born, and I started in the industry when I was 19 and then took over about 11 years ago.
Fabulous. So have you seen the real estate game change in that time since you've been involved in the business? Yeah,
look, I think in our area in particular, we've seen some very strong growth within the Semaphore and Lefevre Peninsula area. In that time since I began back then, we've literally seen the market triple in some instances. So we've come through some very healthy times, and then of course we had a bit of a stagnant period as well.
And Semaphore, Lefevre, Largs has been in those suburbs which are really similar to a lot of the old established suburbs around the country where they're beachside,
yes,
very coastal.
Yep.
You've got a combination of old bungalows,
yep,
a combination of sort of trust homes.
We do, yeah.
All types, and then now you get the real upmarket type
yeah,
established homes being built. And I see some of the developers down there, the builders, etc., are really taking a keen eye on some of those investment opportunities that are down there.
Yeah, very much. And Port Adelaide at the moment. So you've got the release of Dock 1 and Fletcher's Slip, which is the old industrial area along the Port River itself. That's all just been released to the public and within the last fortnight. So they're being sold off the plan as we speak.
It reminds me a lot of Fremantle every time I go down to Port Adelaide. Well, I should say every time I go to Fremantle it reminds me of Port Adelaide, but I think Fremantle just took off a little bit quicker than what we've got.
Yeah, so I actually went to a information evening last week on Dock 1, and he said when people say to him, oh, you want it to be like Fremantle, he's actually saying he wants it to be better than Fremantle.
Yeah, so, why not? Yeah. I mean, Port Adelaide, for those of you who haven't been down there, if you come to South Australia, you need to see it, but it is a unique place. It's established, but there's some gorgeous old buildings down
Beautiful.
there, and it's about time that sort of really takes off, where you've got that old industrial type building that's been converted into housing.
Yes. Yep.
Well, Kate, we've had questions that have been fired into us on this, and I thought you'd be perfect to answer some of these because we've saved these questions for an expert like yourself. So we get this a lot with properties in established suburbs, and the three key things that renovators should take into consideration before they start renovating. What's your experience with that? Because I'm guessing you've got clientele that are looking to sell, but you give them some advice on what they should do before.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what are those things?
So I guess it depends on the style of property that they're going for. If they are looking at renovating an older character home, then obviously when it comes to resale, you want structurally and building wise, you want it to be, obviously up to code. So that is a big consideration for people when reselling it. So you definitely want to check and make sure there's no major structural defaults, like obviously no previous white ant damage, salt damp, anything major like that.
Do you suggest that they actually, if you own the property and you're about to renovate it, do they, if they're not aware that they might even have those issues, do they engage a building consultant or some building expert to?
I think the problem, obviously with doing a building inspection, people's expectations, they're not always understanding what they're bringing them on for. So the job of a building inspector is to let you know what should be done in the property.
To comply.
That's right. So there's always going to be something that comes back. So I think it is a smart thing to do, because obviously then okay, what areas can you put into? And then obviously from a resale perspective, you don't want those faults to be coming up and affecting your resale either.
Okay. And in terms of other than checking out for white ants and structural pieces, what is going to be the key things to focus on? Obviously, they don't want to give the buyer a bum deal. They're ensuring they're complying with everything. But to get the best maximum value for themselves? What should they be focusing on?
I think if it's a character property, you want to retain as much original character as possible. So the original timber flooring, skirtings, windows, keep as much authentic character as you possibly can. As far as the structural, electrical, plumbing, roofing, those types of things are big concerns for the next buyer as well. So generally once a purchaser knows that those things have been taken care of, then they become very emotional about the purchase, and that's when you get the bigger dollars.
And emotion is where people make the decision on how to buy and what they love.
That's right.
So that reminds me, you mentioned timber flooring.
Yep.
So with people that have got existing homes and they're carpeted or vinyled, and they might think, well, we'll spruik it up and paint the place, but don't realise they've got a massive value in that flooring.
Yes.
And flooring is such a key piece.
Yeah.
Would you suggest them to just take that extra time to maybe lift those carpets or vinyls up, sand it down and get it polished, because that can make a huge difference to the buy?
Yes, I would.
Price?
Yep, 100%. And I think obviously it adds to that character and that warmth and appeal of the home as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you've got a limited budget, and this comes up a lot, we've got people that obviously are seeing opportunities now in the market, and this is Australia-wide, and you have a limited budget and you're going to be doing work to the home. Where is the best money spent?
Yep.
If they've got a place in suburbs like the ones that you look after?
I think again focusing on the structure and the integrity of the home. So if people know they're buying an older character property that structurally is really strong,
Sound,
then that gives them a lot of confidence in what they're buying. And a lot of time cosmetically people will have their own vision of what they want to do to the home as well. So there is obviously the structural and that element to it, but then cosmetically you want to showcase it as well. So things like bring back the floorboards. That's probably the main one, exposing the timber floors, obviously having the timber mantles open, etc. But showcasing that character.
Can you think of any situations where you've gone to clients' homes, they want to sell it and they don't realise they've actually got perhaps a real treasure somewhere that they could highlight and flag? Because I remember my grandma's house, where she had this old marble fireplace mantle and just didn't realise that was a feature of the home. So what is it that you've come across with some of your clients that they've uncovered or could uncover? We
see a lot of instances, because back in the day it was the fashion to cover up all the fireplaces. So I've actually had a few in my time that they've had a piece of timber board in front of what is the open ornate fire piece itself.
Which is a feature, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. So quite often we've instructed people to pull that away and it'll expose the open fire itself. Again, with timber flooring, so sometimes people will have jarrah floors underneath and they don't always realise. In that instance, we'll often just instruct them to bring back a portion of the carpet so people can see that there is the jarrah underneath.
So even if they don't want to go to the full cost of... Yeah, that's great.
So at least just bringing back the old carpet so people can see what's underneath.
That's probably a good hack if you can't afford to actually go and polish the whole lot, but you can identify the buyer that is there. That lifts the value instead of wondering what could be under those floors.
Yeah.
What do you find with old bathrooms, and particularly with tiles and so forth?
Yes.
Because that's another part of my business where I get involved with bathrooms and wet areas. But sometimes the older bathrooms, you cannot find the way they tiled back in those days, all the types of tiles.
Yeah,
exactly.
I've even had some instances where there's been old tessellated tiles underneath, which is a real find.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so what do you do then? Is there a way that they can remove that and polish them up? Or?
Yeah, I believe in that instance they had pulled up the tiles that were on top, and then underneath were these beautiful old tessellated tiles, which was a real bonus.
And so again, that is an opportunity because bathrooms obviously are one of the main rooms of the home to add the value.
Yeah.
With that question comes up a lot with our clients with kitchens and bathrooms. And how obviously the news is, and when you watch any program, that they talk about putting your time and money towards those two areas because they're the biggest spend in a home.
Yeah.
How much, where's the line sort of drawn about between overspending, if you're going to sell, and just enough to do what you need to do to give that room the facelift?
Yeah. I think right now expectations for kitchens are good storage, strong appliances, so not, you know, I think if you spend the money on strong brands with your appliances, you'll see that come back.
Great.
And stone bench tops are almost a standard now, so people are almost expecting that when it comes to a new kitchen or a refurbished kitchen that there would be some type of stone bench top in there.
And even if that's a synthetic type stone, it doesn't have to be a natural granite or anything like that.
Yeah, that's fine. You don't have to go overboard with that, but that is almost an expectation.
With places like, I was in IKEA a few weeks ago and I couldn't believe the amount of people spending so much time in these little display areas where they were showing these little home kitchens. And obviously, listening to the conversations, I just like to eavesdrop and just understand what the client was doing there. And a lot of them are in that process of flipping a home or getting ready for a sale. How those types of kitchens, without devaluing, I mean, compared to putting your money into, you can spend $100,000 in a kitchen or more with a specialist out there. But what does a kitchen like IKEA or someone from a popular furniture place that you could, the DIY or do-it-yourself kitchen, where can you go wrong with that? Yeah. And what have you seen? Like, because it could be a real letdown if it's not done right.
I've seen, there seems to be that standard IKEA kitchen that has like the grooves in the doors and that certain type of handle that seemed to be very popular for a few years, so you would see that quite repeatedly, and I think people can pinpoint, oh, that's an IKEA kitchen.
Right.
So I think if you were going to go IKEA, you don't want to go something that they can instantly recognise as
a common look.
Yeah. So if you went for an IKEA, I'm sure they've got a higher end version of their brand, so you would perhaps opt for something that was a little bit higher end.
And that was one example. I mean, I think Bunnings have got Caboodle kitchens.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of brands out there these days. How do you hide? So you're saying that if you're going to go with one of those more affordable, I won't say cheaper, but more affordable do-it-yourself kitchen, you've got to try and put a subtle touch to it that looks individual. Yes,
or you could say go for the IKEA cabinetry but upgrade your appliances, so go a really high-end appliance, and that gives it the wow factor then.
Great. And colours these days, Kate? I mean, in suburbs like Semaphore and Port Adelaide, you've got these character homes, you've got bungalow type homes. What are the best colour schemes are you seeing? And what are people looking for? Especially if you have got timber floors and you have maintained the tessellated tiles or the original tiles. What are the schemes that work best to ensure that you? I know some people we see go with these feature walls and these great colours. It's great if you live in it, but if you want to sell it, it might not appeal to someone else. So what's the advice there?
Definitely keep away from any strong, pops of colour. I think keep it very neutral, maybe a mirrored splashback or a tiled splashback. I'm seeing some really lovely feature tiled splashbacks, which may be like a little character tile or reproduction tessellated tile as a splashback. That's quite nice. But I think overall you want to keep it fairly neutral. That would be my thoughts.
With a colour scheme.
Yeah, very neutral.
And in terms of when you do go neutral, the types of paint finishes, like people like to think that they go with a shiny look, but we know that with old bungalows, gloss is not great. You actually want to go with a matte type paint because it does hide all the little bumps that you might find in these old walls over time. Do you see that people get it wrong if they just with the type they might have picked the right colour but gone with the wrong type of paint?
Yes. Yep. I think a lot of people will go for that high gloss finish, obviously around door frames or sometimes on the skirt. That type of thing.
But the walls in general, the ceilings, it's the matte look.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
How much impact does the landscape have on these types of homes? Like if we focus a lot on bathrooms and kitchens, as we said, and the wet areas. But what can the landscape piece or the exterior piece do to the home if you are preparing to sell or renovate in value?
You know, I really think like a good old-fashioned, beautiful, lush green lawn is really undervalued as far as representing or representing a home.
What does that do? Does it give it an impression of?
It looks, finishes it off really nicely. So if you're a young family or a young couple, obviously if you've got pets or children, you're going to find that very appealing. And obviously from a looks-wise as well, I think it finishes it off really well. And then just some basic plantings normally.
And more focus on the front of the yard because people sort of drive past and that's the first impression.
The facade's very important. So that, you know, that old saying, you don't get a second chance to make a first impression. So quite often we might be at an open home, you'll see people drive past, or they might, you know, drive past but not stop. So you really want to catch them when they're driving past. And
where does that take things like carports and garages? Because people overlook that, because sometimes, you know, I've been to an open inspection and you do, as you just mentioned then, the first impression is you go past, it looks good.
Yep.
You walk around and you go into the garage and you go, this cluttered with crap everywhere.
Yes. Yeah.
What's the advice there on because the garage will be looked at to ensure that, okay, I'm going to buy a home with a garage, I can put a vehicle in there. But if I'm seeing it's all full of walk-in robes or type of covered spaces, that limits me with that.
Yeah.
Do people need to give thought to the garage area?
Yes.
Storage?
Yeah, most definitely. I think the level of what buyers are expecting at a level of presentation now has really increased, especially say probably over the last 2 to 3 years. So it's become very commonplace now that as opposed to having a vacant home, it would be staged. So it would be very seldom that you would represent an empty property. Most vendors would invest in some type of furniture staging. Same with garaging. Gone are the days of just cramming everything in the garage. From a buyer's perspective, they want to see nicely presented homes. And if you're not at that level, then you fall below the rest of them.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a giveaway then.
Yeah.
And things like, if you have got salt damp.
Yep.
Now, I'll talk about it as you're the seller of the home, because in those old established suburbs that does come up with efflorescence. It can be an expensive one to fix. If you've got the issue, you've got to disclose it.
Yes.
Or fix it.
Yep.
But what do people need to, if you're the buyer, what should the buyer be asking for?
Yep.
Even if they can't see it? Do they ask for a report? Do they need to be a bit more wiser in terms of, okay, I love this old established character suburb, but these are the potential risks that could be there? Like you mentioned white ants before. Yep. But with salt down, what should that buyer be asking the agent or the vendor?
I think a lot of times as the agent, we can only disclose what we're told, and a vendor may or may not realise that they have those faults. So obviously that's where a building inspector would be able to direct you as a buyer. But more so not to be put off by those things entirely, because a lot of times if people hear the word like asbestos or salt damp or previous white ant damage, they'll automatically assume that that's a huge expense to fix or remove. And quite often that's not the case. So I know a client recently, I think their entire salt damp treatment was only around the $3,000 or $4,000.
Okay.
So it's not as much as what people think, but we're being trained to assume that it's thousands.
Major cost.
Yes. Yeah. So you don't want to miss out on a great opportunity with a property because you hear those words.
Yeah. So knowledge is, and that's where obviously talking to a professional can help guide you on that. So with that, you just made me think of something about basements and cellars, because those older properties do have that.
Yep.
If you've got a basement or cellar, what should you be doing to take the biggest advantage of that? Because, you know, obviously wine lovers would look at it, but also from a young family's point of view, it's another storage area potentially. What should you be checking with your cellar before you go and put it on the market, or what needs to happen with it?
Yeah, I think a lot of people from a buyer's point will always ask if it's a dry cellar. So that's obviously really important. So you'd want to remove all items from the cellar so it is accessible, and just make sure that I don't know if you get someone in to double check that it is dry, and there's no dampness in there.
And if there is dampness, there are ways of drying it out.
Mm-hmm.
There are different products and companies that can help with that.
Yeah.
But is the seller, would you advise someone to, before they go and put on the market, then to spruik it up, to actually use it as part of the open inspection profile?
Yes.
Because it's it could be the difference between another 0 or few percentage on the sale value.
Yep. And either now with some of our properties that have been empty, we've actually staged the sellers, so the stylist has set up a little desk down there or armchair,
home office.
great.
Yeah.
So we're actually now staging the sellers with the home as well.
Kate, in your area, and I've obviously enjoyed going down the Semaphore Port Adelaide Way, but it's common now where you see either homeowners that look at, okay, where's the future, where's potentially our super fund, or how we're going to retire, and they'll look at their property and they're on a decent sized block, and it's either they knock down and they build 2, versus knocking down and building the dream home, the bigger one.
Mm-hmm.
What's the advice there for a client that might come to you and says, they show you a block of land that might be 1,000+ square metres?
Mm-hmm.
What would you suggest them to do these days with that opportunity?
I think it would depend obviously on the client and their situation. So within the Semaphore Largs area in particular, there's some strong conservation zonings in play. So a lot of the bigger, older blocks can't be touched.
Okay.
So a lot of those properties can't be demolished.
So like heritage listed, are they? Yeah.
They're not heritage listed, they're classed as properties of contributory value.
Right.
So the council frowns strongly upon them being demolished. And in order for them to be demolished, you need to be able to
special permit.
Yeah, you need to be able to prove it. So what we actually find, especially in that Semaphore Largs coastal strip, that there's very little, if any, development. So that might cross that off the list as an opportunity.
If you're sort of
further in,
K back from the 1K back or so from the beach, but you have that opportunity.
Yeah, we are starting to see more of it happening. So I would look at it and think, okay, if I sell this property, you need to know, if you sell right now, what will you achieve for it?
Mm-hmm.
And then you cross-examine that with, if I go ahead and do my subdivision, what are those costs? What is it going to cost me to build? What are my holding costs? And then am I going to be here long term or not? That's what I would be looking at. So if it's a case of you have a bigger property, you want to downsize, you don't want to move out of the area, I think that's a great option for people. Because a lot of people want to stay in the area that they've been in for 20 or 30 years.
Yeah.
But obviously there is the process involved with that, which can be lengthy. So you're looking at, and sometimes 6 to 12 months turnaround.
If you got that big land and you could, the cost you would be going to build another unit next door, and complete knockdown versus maybe putting a pool in or a bigger landscape there, gazebos, etc. The end game is you might spend probably on par with less pain, but a greater value with the final property. Would that opportunity be there in a suburb like that?
Oh, potentially, yes. I think before you made that decision, you would need to talk to a professional in that area, a professional agent, and get a strong understanding of what families are looking for, what would your buyer look like, and what would their expectations be. And then obviously if you went ahead and knocked down and rebuilt, then what is it going to look like? A lot of people are trending away from smaller blocks. We're seeing a lot of people wanting the larger blocks again. But obviously from a retiree perspective, they're wanting those options.
Tell me, Kate, some of the stories, or a story that might come to mind on where people just got it totally wrong with trying. You probably got lots of them, but maybe come to mind that you might be able to share with the audience that they could learn from someone else's bugger ups.
I can't think of one in particular, but I guess in regards to renovating, if you have a character home, keep it character. You wanna be true to the originality of the home.
So if you're seeing the programs on TV where they're in a renovation, it might not suit the area and the home you're in.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, so you need to research, know who your buyer is going to be. And then obviously,
And if you know, and look, it's a common one that comes up because it's like people just dive into these situations sometimes and see these programs, get inspired, or look at a magazine.
Yeah.
But then don't realise the impact that could actually be having, because you could be in a suburb where no one else in your street or streets around you doing something like that, and it can work against you.
Yeah.
So what, like, should they be getting advice on that? Like,
very much so, yeah. And saying that, like, there's obviously internet-based information these days. So I've actually had a few clients that have bought a property and tried to turn it around in 3 to 6 months. And a lot of people are begrudging of people that are going to make money. So even though they might like the product, they can see that this client only bought it 6 months ago for X amount, and now we're asking this.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, with how much information's on the web, people can see all that now.
Yeah.
So you really want to make it stand out and think, okay, you obviously have to be wary of what you're spending,
of course,
but you need to give them a reason as to why we are now asking what we're asking.
And there's a lot of professionals out there that can help, that live and breathe this. And we've got our go-to service where we've got professionals that will give advice on that.
Yeah.
But it's funny how many times that you give that advice and people have sort of gone in this direction and realise they've got to take a whole 180 because they thought they were going to do what they saw on the television program, and it's just not going to be suitable for where they live, what they want. And just bringing sort of the emotion out of it for a moment and just getting some sort of rationale back into the thinking.
Yeah.
Do you guide your clients towards specific professionals like an interior designer? And you mentioned building inspector before.
Yep.
A builder, a roofer. Where do you go with that?
Yeah, look, we definitely have access or knowledge of people that we recommend to our clients. So I think a lot of people, don't feel scared to utilise the services of an agent. Like, they may feel, I'm not going to be selling soon, so I don't want to waste someone's time. That's what agents are there for. So obviously have someone come out and they can give you advice on, what they think buyers are looking for. And then that could lead you in the direction of, okay, we need to get an architect out or get the stylist to come out, etc.
And that's the big one. When you spend that little bit of money at the start, but it can make you so much more at the end, or ensure that you don't actually go the other way around, where you've actually spent a whole lot of money and found that you've devalued, or you're getting very little back for all your effort. Yeah. Because it is a big one. Yeah,
and I think going to open inspections in the area as well. I'm sure people already do that, but obviously get out and look at as much property in that area.
Yeah. Okay, last one, because you've spent a lot of time here and I appreciate your time, but you brought up one before that hasn't come up in the past, but it comes up with certain questions, and I haven't raised it, but you mentioned about asbestos roofing.
Yes.
What do you give and I know with asbestos law, there's different asbestos laws around the country, so some states you can't encapsulate it, you've got to remove it. Some states you can coat it if it's a fence or it's a roof. But what is your advice to people if they know they've got asbestos and what they should be doing in that regard?
In a few suburbs within my area, there is a lot of asbestos, normally in the fencing. Yeah. When it comes to asbestos fencing, I don't see that as much of a concern as if you had an asbestos roof. So asbestos roofing, from a buyer's perspective, would be a very strong turn-off. So often we might see a lower price achieved as a result of that, not so much with the fencing issue. So I had one recently where we had both asbestos fencing and roofing. So we went and obtained quotes for asbestos removal and presented those to buyers, so they were under the understanding of, okay, it's not going to be $10,000-$20,000 to remove it. It's actually only between $3,000 and $6,000 to remove the lot, and then obviously you got the replacement costs on top of that.
And that's the same with I've seen some extensions or additions of the older ones where you've got people think it's like blue board, but it's actually the old asbestos walling. Asbestos in general, it's not dangerous until it's broken. No. But obviously, the more it ages, the more chance it gets brittle and then it can break, and especially if you've got young people in the home. So the biggest thing is we tell people, do not try and just think you'll take it apart and then realise it's asbestos. Get the advice first. Yeah. Because it is a fairly hazardous material and handling is so important. It's not just for your home, but also your neighbours as well, because the fibres fly around, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Do you get many people that try and encapsulate it, or just say, well, we'll just paint over it and...
I get a mixture. So I think if we are chasing the higher dollars, and let's say if there was an asbestos extension there, you would probably replace it. You would get rid of it. Because for some buyers, as soon as they hear that word,
it's a put off.
They'll get put off immediately.
Yeah, look, I think that's the one. There are specialists in the field out there that do that, and I agree with what you said, that a lot of people say, oh, well, then the laws are that it's, unless it's broken, it's not dangerous, but you're meant to have obviously got to be on the asbestos register, but it's always this landmine that's potentially ticking there, and if you remove it, I think it gives you the ability to actually even upsell the fact that if I was to go to an open inspection and someone, even the agent said, well, they recently had asbestos roofing or fencing that's been removed.
Yes.
It implies to me that that's been a vendor that's conscious, wants to do the right thing, and I probably think there's a lot of other good things that have been done around the home.
Yes. Yep.
Instead of just, we'll just hide it and mask it and hope for the best.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
And you always want to buy from someone you think there's a bit of trust in the quality of what you're investing in.
Yeah. And I think if it is an instance where it is asbestos fencing, for example, quite often obviously we don't blare it from the rooftops, but we'll say to people, if they ask us, we'll obviously say, yes, we believe it is asbestos. So a lot of times if you give them the heads up, so if you've got it, you don't necessarily want to try and hide it. But if we are chasing the upper end, you probably should remove it.
Kay, it's been great advice, and it's been fantastic having you on the Reno Q&A show. We could probably talk for another hour. But those of you in South Australia down the Semaphore area, Kate's business down at Raine Horne on Semaphore Road.
Yes.
Go in and see Kate. She can help you with your sale or whatever the inquiries you mentioned. As she said, there's also advice that they can provide as agents. And for those of you that maybe just want to drop Kate a line online, you can either send it through us at Monster and we can put it through to Kate, or check her out for just to drop an email or a message and see how it goes. But Kate, thank you. That advice has been fantastic. I'm sure our renovators out there are going to get a lot of value out of what you discussed today with us.
Great, thank you.
It's been great having you on board.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time.